sit there and fish for crappie when I was little, and I graduated to what they call walleye fishing. I call it the thinking man fish, because you know what? One day you can catch them, one day you can't, and it's happened to me a lot of times. But I do have a passion for it. Not to be tooting my horn, not to be bragging a little bit, but I'm 4-time Montana Angler of the Year, 3-time Team of the Year, an adult child Team of the Year, and Angler of the Year. And you don't get there by luck. I was at a conference one day, and a guy, and he was a Navy SEAL, 15 years on the other side in the desert. And he said, luck is a residue of preparation. Luck is a residue of preparation. You hearing what I'm saying? That means he prepares. How many of you guys are military or women? Thank you so much for your service. Appreciate it, because I get to do the things I love to do. Thank you. But luck is the residue of preparation. I believe a little bit in luck. You know, when you go to net a fish and the hook pops out and you happen to be in the net, that's the kind of luck. But I was prepared in case that happened, because I was under it deep. But anyways, luck is the residue of preparation. I prepare. You know what I've been doing for the last couple of weeks? Preparing. I've been working on my boat. I've been doing boat maintenance. How many of you have got onboard chargers in your boat? How many of you have been checking the water in your batteries? Well, all I can tell you is on an annual basis, I don't want to put too much of a Hickey spin on it, but I bet you probably put between a half a gallon and up to a gallon of distilled water in them if you pound them as hard as I do. Think about that. They're too expensive to let go dry on you and burn them up, so be thinking about that. You know what other thing I found? I found my battery straps were broken. The little plastic clip, maybe I didn't have a clip, but I sure don't want that on Fort Peck and 6-foot waves going across that bad boy. So preparation, go through your stuff. I've been going through all my rods, going through my hooks, tying rigs for the year, because I really enjoy doing it. Plus it's been kind of icky weather, so it's giving me something to do. But let's talk about fishing. Preparation is part of the key. How many of you got bearing buddies on your trailers? Remember, when you're pumping grease into them, don't pump them till you can't get no more grease. Pump them until you see that spring move a little bit. That's all the pressure you need. That way when you're going across Highway 2 to Nelson Reservoir and it's 100 degrees on that pavement, it don't start expanding and blow out those seals. How many of you ever seen axles with grease all over the side of your boat? Ugh, it ain't healthy. So remember, just put just enough grease in it where you see that spring move, that's plenty of pressure on it. Because when you get on the highway, it's going to expand. So think about it. Preparation. Safety. I can't emphasize it. Make sure your life preservers are in the right place. Make sure you're prepared. Your boat. Working on it at the dock is not the place. You do it at home, on the shop. There is nothing more frustrating than me to spend, now that I'm retired, I might have a little different thought on this, but I do not like waiting for people to get their stuff ready, to make sure their boat runs, make sure the batteries are charged, make sure that. You know, you only have so much time on the water. So take the time to do it. You'll have more fun, a lot more success. Anyways, let's talk about fish. Networking. When I network, there is so much stuff on the internet, telephone calls. There's people that are catching fish all the time in our state, whether it's here to the coast, all the way to the Great Lakes. There's people doing it all the time. There's no reason to go out and try to figure all this out yourself. Utilize your resources. Communicate again is something I really believe in. And that's starting picking up the phone and asking questions. Call me. If I'm going, now don't call me the day before a tournament because I probably ain't going to tell you what I'm doing. But I'll tell you shortly after that, so think about that. One of the things I like to do is network. You got Walleyes Unlimited. I'm telling you what, there's chat pages on there. There's so many people that fish. There's a lot of anglers in here that fish for them. People are willing to talk about what they do. Some people really like to talk about it. So don't be afraid to utilize your resources and use chat pages. Pick up telephones. There's some great opportunities out there. So one of the things I like to do is I check the wind. I've told you this, guys, before. Wind direction is critical, especially in the spring year. Montana has a predominant westerly wind, predominantly. I look on I have a calendar there, I start jotting it down, 5 miles out of the west, 5 miles out of the southwest. I start watching. The reason why I do that, because those wind-swept banks are places that I fish. And you know why I like fishing those wind-swept banks? Usually it's turbulent, there's forage in there, there's minnows in there, and there's always walleyes. There's fish in there chomping, so be thinking about that. Wind-swept banks. I've talked this about before. Montana has something very unique to it, especially in our reservoirs. And that is those black hills that you see. The sun hits that, it telegraphs in, it's more warm. The water is warmer in those areas. Something else to be thinking about. If it's warmer there, there's new life there. Those little fish like coming in there, and so do the big fish like coming in there. Remember, one of the most important things that I'll talk about is an action creates a reaction. An action creates a reaction. So no matter what you're doing, how you're doing it, remember what you're doing. Remember what you're doing, because if you don't, you're going to miss opportunities. You'll put more fish in the boat if you pay attention to details. Details, details, details count. And of course, preparation. So be thinking about that. I try to break down a lake. 0 to 50, 0 to 30. I like the shoreline, especially in the spring. Spring tactics. Every lake that holds predator fish have a unique window that they are going crazy on. And it's going to be starting here probably in about a month when this ice comes off. And it don't matter if it's Noxon Reservoir, whether it's Fresno Reservoir, Valier, Tiber, Fort Peck, Canyon Ferry, Holter, all of those have a window. And it's about 2 weeks where those fish go crazy and they're very vulnerable. And I'm a conservationist. I try never to keep a fish over 20 inches if I'm going to eat it. That's me. But I respect you if you try to do that, because those other fish from 20 to, say, 28 inches, those are the most productive fish in that system, and they're the ones that are going to reproduce. Don't get me wrong, everybody deserves one on the wall. Don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, think about our resources in generations and generations. So it's really important to me that, you know, I try not to eat those fish. And I'll tell you what, those 17, 18 inches are a lot better eaten than any big one anyway, so be thinking about that. So, talking about cranking. I can't emphasize the importance of a line counter. There's other ways to count line. You can go, okay, you can go 2 foot, 4 foot, 6 foot, that works. But precision trolling is critical. And as soon as I can get on to Missouri, I'm going to be pulling this rig with that crank. It's a Fire Tiger, Red Tiger from Flicker Shad. It's my #1 crankbait. I totally love it. But what's most important about this rod is it's forgiving. You can see it's kind of soft. I'm running 14-6 fire line. 14-6 fire line. There is no give. There is nothing there. So I want the rod to take the shock. When those fish hit a crank, they're suicidal. They are aggressive. They're coming in. For whatever reason, they're going to hit it hard. And over the years, I was talking to a guy named Kenny Williams, probably one of the best anglers in our state when it comes to walleye, him and his fishing partner. And him and me were talking at a boat show about having 2 stiffer rods. Have a fish loaded up and it's pulling out. Fish loading up, pulling out. And I started thinking about it. I think I know why that is. Because this line ain't stretching, rods are too stiff, and it's hitting so hard it's tearing those hooks. And I truly believe that. And I remember when I first started pulling kinks, I was running mono. 12-pound sensation. I was running mono. 12-pound sensation, and I caught a lot of fish, and I didn't hardly have any of them come off. And what would happen on those bigger walleyes is I'd be pulling these cranks, and I noticed when you hook up, you go wham, and all of a sudden it just dragged. And I go, okay, and I started reeling. We'd have this happen, they go wham, and it just loaded up, boom, pop off. Why is that? Well, I think it might have been some of those stronger, harder rods. So I went to a little bit softer line, but one of the things I want to talk about is precision trolling, line counter. This is a brand new line counter by Abdul Garcia, a reasonably priced. I got a bunch of the mechanical ones. But when I'm at Fort Peck, I'm at Fresno, Valier's where I learned how to pull cranks, believe it or not, with leg cord. It's so important. When you see those fish on your electronics and they're off that bottom, you have to be in the strike zone. I've been watching a lot of videos. I'm not a very good reader, but I watch a lot of videos. And I watch the Leonard boys, and I can't tell you a segment that I have never seen that they don't talk about boat control. Boat control, boat control, boat control. I'm at Tiber Reservoir. Lucky Bethel's putting on a clinic. First thing he says in the seminar, boat control, boat control, boat control. So when you think about boat control, that is about putting this in the strike zone. In the strike zone. But before I ever put this thing out, first thing I do is I put it in the trough of the boat, I let it lay behind the boat, and I make sure this bad boy is running true. 100% true. Not kicking this way, not kicking that way. If this crank starts going that way, first thing I'll do is I'll grab my little pliers, and you got to tune every crank. Unless it don't run. If it's running true, great. But if it ain't, I'm going to tell you what, you'll catch more fish and have better presentation if it's running true. So if it's running that way a little bit, all I do is grab it and I just give it a little bit of twit on the eye that's coming off the plastic. Just a little bit. And I'll put it back in the water and get it true. Because if it's running true, it's going to start diving to its proper depth in the strike zone. The strike zone. Walleye, eyes, center above eye. Okay? They have a tendency to come up. I've done a lot of ice fishing. I've watched them. in flooded timber with my electronics. And I've seen them sitting in there in flooded timber, and it's like 15 feet below the surface. I'm at 25 feet, old flooded timber on Fort Peck, and I'll come across there and I'll see those things on my structure scan, and I'll sit there and I'll go, okay, I need to be ticking the top of those weeds, or they're actually salt cedar is what they are, and willows, and I want to tick it. So I'll run this thing right over the top of it, and I'll sit there, okay, I'll start at 100 feet. Did I hit anything? No. I'll start playing. As soon as I start ticking, I'm at 125 feet at 1.8 miles an hour. Going across that flooded timber. I'm just off it. I'll lift it up just a hair, and I'll watch that thing. And I can literally tell you, those fish will come up and pound these things. And they're sitting in that timber for a reason, because the minnows are in the timber, and I'll see them. And I can tell you countless times that I've been sitting on Fort Peck going across that thing, and I'll go across it for 2 or 3 hours and not see anything. And then all of a sudden, all these big arches start showing up. And I see little white dots. And that's when I go, it's time, it's strike zone. And I remember fishing a fall classic tournament there, and I knew the fish were there. We seen the fish were there. We pre-fished it. Our spinner bite went to heck. We couldn't seem to figure that out. We knew those fish were out in there. And about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, all of a sudden, those fish started showing up in that timber. And we said, we know what to do. 125, we made 3 trips through there and had about 35 pounds. That was execution, because we knew those fish would hit. But precision trolling. This is just an 8'6" Abu Garcia. It's a great rod, but I got to tell you, the 14 6 fire line is a ticket, and you can wrench stuff out with it. It's strong line. I use a polymer knot. I'm just on a regular clevis. That way it don't screw up. Be careful on the size. You get too big, it'll screw up the action. You'll notice it'll start guiding the lure instead of the bill guiding the lure. So that's critical. Tune them. Make sure they're in the zone. Make sure you know. Another thing I like to do is I love to run boards. And the reason why I like running boards, now this is the tattletale board. And there's nothing better when you hear that. That's a great sign. Because usually if you get a snag or something, it'll go like that. But if you hear a boom, I was fishing University Bay on just out of Wisconsin, and those fish would hit so hard they pull the board down and everything like a bobber. It was the craziest thing I ever seen. But you'd hear that clunk. But the reason why we had that is if we got a little weed on it, or you got a snail or anything got on it, it'd pull that thing down. And I've also had fish pull it just like this, and you don't know it. One of the things I like to do this is shallow water and deep water. Put out a spread. Nice thing about this is I can run 2 of these things out, 10 or 15, 20 feet, depending on what's going on. So I talked about, okay, I got fish. I need to be at 125 feet going over across the tip. You got to be in the strike zone. Sometimes you got to be pounding the bottom. I talked to a guy about that today. Relate to the fish strike zone, but I can tell you it's best to be slightly above them than below. If you see fish in the middle of that column, they're active fish. They're going to come up and bite. One of the things I like to do with this is get it and push it to the shoreline if I can, if I'm fishing shoreline, or if I'm in the middle of the lake. But it gives me a wider spread, and then I can run that out there on the end. So I'm going across there. If I'm running along the shoreline and I know it's like 6, 8 feet, I can shorten that thing up. I ran cranks 5 feet behind this board. At Tiber, Fort Peck, Canadian Ferry. Doesn't seem to bother them, so it's something to be thinking about, but it's very shallow, and sometimes it's clear water. Another advantage. Another advantage is you can slide it up, run it along the shoreline, and you can be in 3 or 4 different water column depths. You can be at 5 feet, you can be at 10 feet, you can be at 15 feet, you can be at 20 feet. But one of the things about boards is when you're running them out there, pay attention to the board. If you see a board just start to slow back and start to get straight behind you instead of running out, kind of say on a 45 from your boat, there could be a fish on it. Or if it's going like this, that's a fish pulling on it. Something to pay attention to. A lot of people do not pay attention to details, and they just think, oh, it's going to go down on here, or I'm going to hear this. That don't always happen. Pay attention. So pay attention to that. You know what a fish is doing. He's pulling on it, so be thinking about that. Now run straight fire line, straight to this. I always try to run my tag on there, not because it's a tattletale, because I do not like losing the board and going chasing it, because I already got a whole spread out there. So I'll run those out 10, 15 feet on each side of a 9-foot boat. I'll run these somewhat 4 or 5 feet off the back. I'm covering, 60 feet out there. And with the rattles and the cranks that we have today, they work pretty good. So be thinking about that. But the most important thing on cranks is they're running true and being in the strike zone and having boat control. Everybody follow me on that? Again, Line counter is critical, it's precision. When I started using the line counters, it made a difference of how many fish we were catching because I could keep that bait in the zone for a longer period of time. And sometimes I'm running on the bottom until it's just chugging. Well, I want to know where it's chugging. When I set up my baits, I'll run them in all 3 different things. We'll sit there, and I fish with a great angler named Jason Mandel. He's going to be on here at 11 o'clock. Outstanding angler. And he's going to go into some more detail on rigging and some other things to do on Fort Peck. But what I like to do is I'll start trying to get one in the bottom, depending on the water. Is it muddy? Is it rock? Is it gravel? Is it flooded timber? Is it weeds? And I'll tell you what, one of the things we're doing over there is on the weed lines, those walleyes are sitting on the edge of those weed lines and they're coming out and grabbing fish. So what we were doing is running long rods, sitting out there on the side of their boat, no boards, no nothing, and just trying to run that bait as close as we can to those weeds without getting hung up. And I mean, you're going to get hung up, but the worst thing that you can do is not tune your baits. If you do not tune your baits, and you're running 125 feet on 4 rods, and I try to vary them a little bit, because if you're not, and that thing's turning, it's going to go over and hook into this one, that'll hook up to that one and follow up, and then it's going to hook into that one, and I'll tell you what, anybody ever have that happen? I'm telling you what, you've had it happen, haven't you, Mark? It's a yard sale, or whatever you want to call it. It is ugly, 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 ugly. And it just doesn't come unglued, and you got to have some good patience to undo, 400 feet of fire line. So be thinking about that. Questions on cranking? I only got about 15 minutes per segment, so if there's any questions on cranking.
Trolling speed?
Trolling speed, great question. Anywhere from probably 0.5 all the way up to 4 miles an hour. Whatever the fish want. And action creates what? Who said that? So, if you're paying attention, Pete's Tackle, custom painted, some beautiful cranks. And because you're paying attention, you were the first one to pay attention, you were the second. It kind of helps people stay engaged. Oh, you think, Jim? Yeah. Mark probably has a couple hundred of these, but see, now you'll pay attention. Where's Warren? Usually Warren's sleeping. You paying attention, Warren? But anyways, it's so critical. But right up to 4 miles an hour, and there's nothing wrong with it. You got to do what the fish want, and you got to be in the strike zone. It doesn't matter. An action creates a reaction. You got to stay in the strike zone. Do what the fish want. But that's what I was talking about, is an action creates a reaction. If you're running at 2.5 miles an hour, and you're at 50 feet behind the line, and that hit it, or 75 feet, okay, first thing me and Jason are going to do, we're going to start putting those rods and lines in those zones, because we know that's what caused that last fish to trigger. If that don't work, we start experimenting again. You have to experiment. It's important to experiment. You learn stuff all the time, because what works today don't always work tomorrow. I can tell you that right now. It does not always work. And if you're confident that those fish are in there, like I was telling you, we knew those fish were in there in that fall classic tournament. And when those fish come up in that water column, come up in that flooded timber, we knew we'd catch them. And that's a lot of confidence in a tournament, and sit there for that many hours waiting for them. But when they showed up, a couple runs through there, it was over with. And remember, something else we learned the hard way is, with this fire line, it's sharp. Be careful with it. It's sharp. It'll cut you. Is you hook up in some big timber down there, you have a tendency to put your thumb on it, crank down the drag, and you pop those loose. Sometimes you'll pop the hook out. Usually you pull the hooks. What'll happen? Almost all hooks. Be careful when you go to bend them back. You don't get too many shots at them. Be thinking about the next day going back and putting new hooks on, because just like a nail, you move them back and forth enough, they're going to get brittle and they'll break off on you. But remember to always be checking your drags too. And another thing to do is, if you have a tendency to get heavy-eyed in the afternoon, put your clicker down, okay? And that'll give you give away if you hooked a fish or snagged up. It'll wake you up, Warren. It's critical. And it works. Do it all the time. It's a tattletale. So be thinking about it. And action creates what?
Reaction.
Oh. Hey, Pete's Tackle. How many you got? What? You didn't say it.
I am awake. I'm awake.
Oh.
If you're fishing a new water,
Yep.
haven't fished the lake for a while, would you start off with crankbait, live bait, crawler, swim bait, and what would you start with to kind of?
If I've never fished it, and that's part of the reason why I got into tournament fishing, because there's all these tributaries, and it gave me an excuse to go there and learn about it and meet some great people and get some great friendships. That's really the reason I started fishing tournaments. But I also keep a logbook, if I was going on a new body of water, I would definitely research it, contact somebody that's fished it. I mean, you could spend your whole vacation trying to figure it out, where one phone call in 5 minutes, somebody could give you a tip. You know, if I was going to go to Fort Peck, and I didn't know Fort Peck, I called Jason Mandel and say, hey, I either need a guide trip, or I need some points. He's going to help you out. That's what we do. We want to support our industry. But I would research it before I get on it. Now granted, when we went to fish Knoxon Reservoir, there was no information on that thing years and years ago. So we just started working it. And what did we do in the spring? Pitch jigs. That's what we do. But can you catch them on spinner blades? Where's Rich? Oh yeah, thank you, Rich. Can you catch them on cranks? Oh yeah, right now. So, but we spent hours and hours and hours of experiment, which is fun to do, but there's a shortcut. It's called a phone call. Communicate, communicate, communicate again. Did that answer your question?
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to touch on rigging. And I know Jason's going to talk a lot about it when he gets to Fort Peck. All right, I'm running a 7'10", again, a soft rod. 12-pound sensation. Depending on what I'm doing, I'll run a 45-degree angle out there. I like to keep it at 45 and try to keep this in the what? Strike zone. Don't do you no good if it ain't in the zone. And it actually creates a reaction. So if you're up off the bottom and you catch fish, you better get them up off the bottom. Sometimes they want to drag it in the bottom, turn it up the mud. This is a spinner application. It's actually a Berkeley spinner, which I got right down there. Where's they at? Somewhere around here. But they work pretty good, and I've caught a lot of fish on them. And depending on what lake it is, depending on what color, that is one way to rig it. And that's just double crawler harness set up. There's lots of ways you can double leech it. You can run crawlers on it. I know people will run double minnows on it. It is a tool to get you down into the zone. And again, before you ask the question, there's nothing running these things at 3.5 miles an hour with the right weight. We've run up to 3.5, 4 ounce bottom bouncers, cranking 10, 15, 20 feet of water. And action creates a reaction. I know one time there was a guy down at Canyon Ferry, and that guy, him and his daughter, figured out running about 3.5 miles an hour was the ticket. And they put a schlacken on us. The rest of us thought it was a slow presentation. Well, he basically trolled circles around us. So that's a double hook harness. The worst thing you can do is have this hook, second hook too tight where it's gumming up your worm. So be thinking about that. That's one application. But again, it's a tool to get down there. If you're running flooded timber, one of the things we did, we put a fish finder in the back of the boat where we can pay attention, because it don't do you no good to tie up 4 of these things in that timber, because you're down. Downtime is not healthy. And you'll lose it all, trust me, because we've done it so many times I can't count. I can't even tell you how many times we've done it. That is one application. One of my favorites in that presentation, now this will work, is a red Gamakatsu #2 with a leech, or a half a crawler. These are all setups. In my boat, everything's set up this way. Precision, accuracy, preparation. Same thing. Red Gamakatsu. I'm a big Gamakatsu fan. I mean, I'll tell you what, them hooks are sharp, they stick, and they don't let go. That's the way I like it. Let's see if I can hook this thing up. Years ago on the north end of Fort Peck, and this thing works anywhere, was you can put leech on it, pretend this is a leech, hook it right through the sucker, and it's a leech. All it is a red bead. All this is a tool to put it down in there. One thing about Fort Peck, all lakes, if you see them on your electronics, keep going over them. You go over them until you don't see them no more. Because if you don't, you're missing out. Because a lot of times you got to keep that thing in front of their nose, in front of their nose, in front of their nose. Chris Keller, top-notch angler out of Glasgow now, he'll go over a fish 15 times, and sometimes you had to go across it the right way, and it caused that fish to trigger. And Jason will talk about that when he gets to the Fort Peck stuff. But that's the presentation. Another one, hate to get into this thing, but it's ugly. His leech probably accounts for more big fish that I could talk about. One of our best presentations as we had was this right here. And all that thing is just floating down on the bottom. Red Gamakatsu #5. glass bead right there, just floating it around. Some people will tell you, only fish will eat as fast as it can swim. But I can tell you right now, I'd fish them as fast as it takes to get the fish to bite. Because an action creates what?
Reaction.
Glad somebody's paying attention. An action creates reaction. That's one way to do it. One of Jason's favorite ways, call it wacky style. Take that Gamakatsu, hook it right in the middle. It'll cause that thing to turn like that. So it's double tail, split tailing. It'll sit there and spin. It'll put off vibrations. That can cause fish to bite. It's just another way. This thing here, you can run them that way. You can run them with spinners. You can run them with slow death. Max makes a really good lure called, I think it's a slow death hook on their Smiley blade, and that's a deadly presentation. Works really, really good. But again, what the fish want. And again, I've fished these things in 3-4 foot of water, as deep as 40 feet of water. But I can tell you, when you get into 40 feet of water, you better start thinking about your equipment. Again, I told you I got 12-pound sensation. You got to have the right bottom bouncer. I got a 6'10" Abu Garcia rod. I got a Revo reel. Anybody buys a Revo reel today, you get it 3-spooled with Fireline, which is probably a $10 or $12 value, plus a t-shirt. And because of the Berkeley reps out here. So be thinking about that. And there ain't probably a better conventional reel in my book, because it's light, low profile, easy to handle. So be thinking about that if you're interested or in the market to buy yourself a reel. But one of the things, me and Jason were sitting out there off this island one time, and we were about 40 feet of water, had every bottom bouncer we owned trying to drag them through there, tried to stay on the bottom, the wind was blowing hard. And we were hooking fish, Jason was hooking them, and we didn't have heavy enough gear. And I have these rods, they're called Heartlands, they're meat rods, they look like broomsticks is what they look like. And Jason pulled them out and he started sticking those fish. Too much line stretch. I don't know about you, but I've caught a lot of fish, and many times those fish will come down, they'll clamp so hard on a jig, on a hook, they'll actually collapse the hook sideways and never get it in their mouth. And you go to net it and it pops right out. I lost count how many times that's happened. So be thinking about that. What it was, we'd set the hook on these things, and there's 40, 45 feet down. We were off the edge of the river channel, and we'd have them loaded up, and they were popping off. Couldn't figure out what was going on. And then Jason went over, got into that bigger, heavier stick, and he started sticking them, which saved us on that tournament. But I can tell you right now, be thinking about your equipment depending on what you got going. Yes, sir.
What model is your reel?
That's a Revo XT. They got a bunch of them out there. But I mean, you can see this is a really light ergonomic rod. And again, one of the things, Jason's always ran pretty well, I call them soft tip rods. And I had some 7-foot Finwicks were the mediums, so just a little bit on the stiff side. And so when those fish would grab it, I think they're going like that, and then all of a sudden they let go. And then Jason's rods were firing, and they would load up, load up, load up, load up. So that was the difference of having the right equipment. So I decided, well, I better soften my rods up too, and it took me a long time to find some rods. But I know Chancey's got some really nice ones out there, both in Berkeley and Abu Garcia. It's about having the right rod for the right application. And keep in mind, you can use almost anything in any application, but the reason why we set up this way is we're in tournaments, we're in pressure situation, we don't have a lot of time to retie everything. And I mean, we want to be able to execute. Time, you only got so much time on that water. And Fort Peck could be a good example. We could be running 35 to 40 minutes away from where we were fishing. Pretty easy. That's a long boat ride at 60 miles an hour. So you want to take, and I'll tell you, we've caught a lot of fish in the last 10 minutes before we got to go. So not having good equipment, not having reliable boats, not doing preparation to have reliable equipment, for when we're on the water, we can get the most out of it and get us back safely. Number one priority is safety, safety, safety. Can't emphasize that. So, questions? Again, yes, Warren.
I wasn't dozing again. When you talked about hooking up the night crawler, you said put those two hooks far apart so it swims naturally. And yet you talked about the
Gamakatsu. Right. So they're just different presentations.
yeah. But you talked about the other one,
The leech?
the leech. Yes.
The leech with the red bead.
You talked about kinking it so it would spin and send out a vibration.
Yep. You hook the night crawler in the middle, just like that,
Yeah.
with that single hook, and it'll sit there and it's double tail. Jason calls it wacky style, or whatever you want.
Yeah.
And what it does, it'll start spinning that hook.
Yeah.
And an action creates a reaction. Doesn't mean it's gonna work. Sometimes you nose hook it, let it do its thing.
Okay.
Again, this is a tool to get you into the strike zone. Every body of water that I fish, and almost everything in Montana, has drop-offs, ledges, places where it runs off. Those fish will relate to sometimes on that shallow and they'll drop off. This is a great tool to be tight to your boat and be able to maneuver around them. When you're pulling cranks, a lot of times they're farther away. So if you cut the corner, it's gonna go up shallow. You have to anticipate those things. Things I look at, before, some of you have been in my seminars, before I actually go, I'll put it down in the water, I'll look at it. How's it turning? What's it look like? All right, mental note, boom. I didn't catch nothing on that. Well, let me try wacky style. Boom, I caught a fish. It was turning counterclockwise. I relate to that. I try to focus on those things. Details, details, details. And a lot of times, if I get a fish and I miss it, I'll punch the button. I already missed them. I'll punch the button. A lot of times they'll come in and they'll swipe it, and they'll turn it right around, and they'll come back looking for it. And I can tell you, I've caught some big fish doing that, because fish are in schools. And I'll talk about that in jigging here in a minute. But again, this could be fished anywhere from 3 or 4 feet all the way to 50 feet if that's what you want to do. Questions? Again, the right tackle, the right equipment, free t-shirt, free fire line out there. It's a good deal. Really good deal. The factory rep should come here every weekend. No questions on trolling? Jason's going to go into a lot of detail on it, but again, you can use almost every presentation. You can put minnows behind it, you can put leeches behind it, you can put night crawlers behind it, you can put cranks behind it. Whatever it takes to put the presentation in the strike zone on those fish. Is that making sense to everybody? Okay. So,
What about size?
bottom bouncer size?
Size.
Size, good question. I'll run everything from small blades as big as my pinky and all the way up to Copenhagen lids. And people laugh at me, but I'm literally saying blades, 8s, 9s, that big. Because everything has a different reaction. Color is important sometimes. You ever hear silver in the sunshine, copper in the clouds? I believe in that. I truly do. It's a different thing. But I also seen it work in reverse. So you always got to experiment. I mean, if you're out searching for fish to Warren's point, don't be afraid to experiment. You got 4 rods, put 4 different things on, see what's happening, and start working. One of the things that I get in a rut is I fish off of memories. I keep thinking, oh, this is what I used to catch fish on. This is what I used to catch fish. This is what I caught them on last week, last year, 5 years ago. Keep an open mind, be diversified. I can tell you right now, we would not be the successful anglers as we are if all we did is one thing. Because we had in our head, you could catch every fish all season long on jigs. Well, when the crankers started beating us, we said, we're gonna learn how to run cranks, so we did. And then sometimes the riggers are doing it. You've gotta be diversified. And that's what makes it a lot of fun, is being diversified. That way you're prepared for any body of water at any time. The bottom bouncer weights, everything from a 1/4 ounce all the way up to 4 ounces is what's in my boat. And I do it just because depending on the water, where I'm going, and the speed. Again, I let the fish dictate what we're gonna do. Tell me the story. Are they running deep? Are they running shallow? They want it fast. That's exactly how we do it. Does that make sense to everybody? Details, details, details. And I keep a log. I already started my captain's log, I call it, kind of like Starship thing. But I already put in what I've already done this year. And there ain't been a lot, but I can tell you I've been out like 6 or 7 times on the boat. And I haven't been stumped yet, but I can tell you it's been pretty good fishing. So, but I've been already starting to log it. What's the wind doing? What's the conditions? What's the weather like? What's the water temperature like? What was my presentation? What color? What was going on? I can tell you right now, I was down on Flathead. Pete's tackle, his whitefish slayer or whatever, that thing, I don't know, probably count for a couple hundred fish already year to date, so pretty exciting. Pete's tackle, I gotta tell you, he's a local tackle guy. He makes some of the greatest tackle. He'll make any colors you want. He custom paints them. He's really getting into the painting. He does such a great job. But it's neat thing about it is everything he tries to do is in the U.S., and I really like that. But he's a local guy. He is always donating to us. Always, always, always. Whether it's kids fishing, whether it's this for this presentation, or no matter what it is, banquets, he is always donating it. And you know what? I don't know about any of you, but last time I checked, nothing's free. Nothing is free. Every little thing costs right down to that label. It costs somebody something. So really appreciate it. Just remember, action creates what?
Reaction.
Oh, finally. Start worrying.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now what do you think's best, to pull a smaller bottom bouncer further behind the boat, or a heavier one closer to the boat?
The goal is, when we're running forward, not wind drifting, when we're running forward, say I'm running bow down, got the iPilot rocked in, rock and rolling. Oh, I love that. It's the best tool, having that anchor lock, but I'm gonna talk about that in a minute. I'll run, good example, say I'm in 18 feet of water, 15 feet of water. I'll run 2.5s probably in the front to 2, whatever I can get away with, depends on the speed, to his point. I want a 45-degree angle, and I've been actually, I used to run 6, 7, 8 foot leaders, and a lot of times they'll get snagged up, I'll get a moss on it, I don't know it, so I've been shortening them up. I want to make sure that it's staying in the zone. I have to keep it in the zone. Don't do you no good with moss on it. So whatever it takes to be at a 45-degree angle. In the back, usually I'll go a ½ ounce lighter. That way there's less chance for me sitting up there, keep pushing the button, keeping my bottom contact, and if somebody in the back's sleeping at the wheel and not paying attention, again, I don't want to tangle up with them, and it will happen. So that's one of the things to do. And I'll run those straight out that, and usually the guy in the back will just pull them in on the 45 just to kind of cover a little bit more of the bottom, or sometimes one straight down the bottom. The deeper you go, the more you can get away with that spread and be more vertical. But stained water, I've caught them 7.5 foot pulling blades. I mean, it just depends on what the fish are reacting to and the water conditions. But try to be at a 45, that way you're in control. That way you're in control of your line. Did that answer your question? Yeah, great. Any other questions before we go? Yeah, Jim?
Are you using snap swivels on your cranks and everything?
I'm using just the old hairline snap swivel, and I try to get away with the smallest one as I can. I made a tactical error, great point. We were running that flooded timber over at Fort Peck, and I went to 20-pound fire line, which is, I mean, you could pull a pickup out with it, I think, if you worked at it hard enough. And I went to heavier swivels and screwing up my action. I mean, they were not tracking. And I go, this ain't working. So I went back to a more, I try to get the lightest, everything I do, I try to go as light as I can and get away with it. But they're small snap swivels. That's what they are.
Ball bearing ones?
Nope,
Oh,
just
little wire ones?
Yep, just little wire ones. I'll run those on my cranks, or on my spinners.
Sure. That's why I was looking, I couldn't see that far.
I can't see that far either. I used to handle all my stuff out, but sometimes it never came back. That is a true story, man. See this stuff will snap? You know, and a lot of times we'll hook up that way, and we'll run that, put a bottom bouncer on it too. But running smiley blades with the rig. Yes, sir. Oh, sure. Question on the tracking. So, yeah. Anyways, hold on there. So if it's going like that, say it's kicking this way, see that little thing right there? Where it's hooked to? Just turn it. Just turn it, don't bend it. Just a little bit, just spin it. And that'll track it. You'll notice it, and then, I'll be honest with you, I've had cranks that I couldn't straighten them out, I couldn't get them to run. But I truly believe it's critical to have cranks that run true. Yep. Any questions before we go to jigging? I gotta get cranking. I mean,
Reaction.
action creates reaction. All right, jigging, probably my favorite way to fish. One of the most ways I fish. Some of you guys are gonna think, oh, he's blowing smoke up my skirt. Excuse me for women, but I mean, bottom line is, or blowing hickey spin. I'm running a lot of fin wick rods, HMGs, HMXs, Elite Techs, and that's what's in my boat. And the reason why I'm running them, and I run 6.2 fire line. And I like the high vis because I can see that line. I'm a line watcher when it comes to jigging. When I'm running rigs and cranks, I'm waiting for the rod tip to be in the water loaded up. But when I'm pitching, I'll pitch to shore, and I'll let it sit, and I'll lift it up and drop it, and I'm watching for the line twitch. Or I'll lift it up, and you know, you watch your line, all of a sudden, boom, you know it hit the bottom. I can see it, I tie it direct. I was fishing with Trent Young 2 weeks ago. He was running fluorocarbon, tied straight on. He was doing good. I was doing just as good. High vis line in clear water, tied direct to the jig. Again, I try to get away with the lightest jig I can. These are the perfection jigs that Snappy's is carrying. And there's a couple reasons why I like them. Because they got a long shank, they got a wide gap. Go ahead and pass those around, show everybody. And they come from a 16th all the way up to 3/8 of an ounce. Again, I want to get away with the lightest jig as I possibly can. Another thing I like about it is see how that thing will sit horizontally? That's what I like. I could tie a leech right onto it. I could stride a night crawler onto it. My favorite presentation is a big fat jumbo night crawler, threaded on, straight on. Should have my glasses on. Just like this. Cut the end of the tail off. This is the best bug in the world, right there. That is as good as it gets. Or a piece of gold.
With a live night crawler?
Live night crawler, tail hook or nose hook. That right there can imitate a couple different things. It could be a hatch, or it could be a crawdad. The favorite thing to do is to pitch it to shore, and I like to drag it back. I talked to a guy earlier today about dragging stuff in the dirt, in the ground, clicking, bang, and hitting rocks. A little vapor trail behind it. That is one of the most deadliest presentations right there that I can think of. I've caught fish probably in every tributary that I've ever fished in Montana. They just love it. And again, I try to go as light as I possibly can. When I'm fishing a tournament, I'll have a rod in my boat. Say I'm running a shoreline. That's my shoreline. I'll have one in the rod holder right there, sitting there. The other one, I'll be pitching to shore. If Jason says, oh, I missed one, but didn't get a hook in him, first thing I'm doing is casting. You know why? Because that fish is feeding. He didn't get a hook in him, he's active, I'm going to get there. But also, when I work that bait back, I just love to pitch to shore, let it settle, lift it up, drop it, lift it up, drop it. Again, Pete's tackle, I mean, he makes some great tackle. There's a lot of ways to hook it. I told you about the night crawler and the jig. That's probably one of my go-to. Another one is either Pete's tackle and his crappie candy or gulp minnows, especially where you can't use minnows. Another one way I'll hook them, and it's probably the easiest way, is right through the nose like you do a normal minnow, and it'll follow and track perfectly. And I like to toss it in, so when I toss it in shore, I lift it up and it flutters down. Toss it up, flutters down. I try to think about what does the fish want. I'll pitch it to shore, lift it up, drop it. If that don't work, I'll pitch it to shore and I'll just drag it. And it's going clicking through rocks, going through, depending on what the bottom's like. If that'll act like a crawdad or a little minnow or something trying to get away, and actually creates a reaction. It's critical to be thinking about that. And again, I got that rod there. A lot of times I'll bring it back, I jig it 2 or 3 times there, I'll cast, all of a sudden, boom, there goes my rod. You know what? Because he followed me all the way to the boat. And there is followers, don't get me wrong. And when I'm walleye fishing, depending on where it's at, when I'm in jig fishing, if I catch a fish, I immediately hit my anchor lock. How many of you guys got anchor locks? Ugh. If you don't have one, do everything you possibly can. Get all your relatives, get family members, friends, outlaws, in-laws, help save up and buy one, because I'm going to tell you, did you buy one there, Warren?
What's that?
You bought a Minn Kota
Yeah.
spot lock, didn't you?
Yeah.
Autopilot. Now I'm not telling you because I'm sponsored, I'm telling you because they work. You can stop. And a lot of times I mention fish are in schools, right? Well, if I catch a fish, I hit that anchor lock immediately because I want to know if there's other fish in that area. Because a lot of times nobody likes being alone new to fish, so I figure there could be a couple more down there somewhere. So a lot of times when I'm vertical jigging, lifting up, dropping, I stick a fish or Jason sticks a fish, immediately hit lock it down. And the nice thing about it is I'm free and I can focus. I can tell you in my boat, the biggest fish in the last probably 15 years have came out of the back of the boat. But I tell you the truth, not just because Jason's a good fisherman, or when he's driving, I'm in the back, I'm a good fisherman, because it's about boat control, putting the bait in the right place. I like running a 6'3" jigging rod. I want something ergonomically. I went fishing 2 weeks ago, walleye fishing, and I pitched jigs for 7 hours, and I knew it was going to be probably, I didn't even know if we're going to catch fish. That might be a little bit early, right? Pitch jigs for 7 hours. That's discipline. You got to want to go do that. Not everybody wants to go do that, but that's what I go do because I knew that's what I was going to do. And me and Trent pitched jigs for 7 hours, and that's all we did. And I want something ergonomic. President Flugers. I mean these are they're good rods. 6'2" fire line. I've caught, biggest fish I ever caught at 6'2" fire line, Tiger Reservoirs, 34-inch, 16.5-pound walleye with a 1/8 ounce jig. There you go. And I've lost count of how many fish over 10 pounds on a 6-pound test. I can tell you that right now. Tie and direct. This stuff is amazing. I fish whitefish with them. I fish lake trout with 6-pound test. Call them or not, tie direct. It's unbelievable strong. I love it. And it's small, light diameter. I mentioned light diameter, small. You know why I like small? Because what does the fish do when it eats? It expels water through its gills, sucks it in. The lighter it is, the deeper it goes, the better the hook set. Remember, all hooks aren't the same. Check them, make sure they're sharp. I have a tendency to turn them out a little bit and open them just a little. That way when those big fish clamp down on that, because I've done it in every lake I fish, Fresno, Canyon Ferry, Fort Peck, bite down on it, especially in the spring. I go to net them. How could that happen? I've caught fish in 4 foot of water on Fort Peck last spring, in 34 foot of water, and I get them in the net and they go, I never had the hook tip in them, but they had it clamped down. Canyon Ferry the same way. They'll bite so hard and they'll collapse that thing. So turn that hook out, make sure they're sharp. You want them things sharp. There's no such thing as a too sharp a hook. And then if you're filing them, don't over file them because then you lose the profile of that tip. If anything, just touch it on the side. And if you got it down to where you only got half a hook, I think I'd get a new one. They're not that expensive. But anyways, that's one thing. Run these things from 1/16 ounce all the way up to 1/2 ounce. Depending on the tributary water, what you're doing. Again, I talked about pitching ashore. I talked about popping it out. Talked about dragging it. Vertical jigging. Reason why I run these Finwicks, HMXs, Elite Techs, Chancey's got stocks of them out there. You know why? Because we use them. They work. And for sensitivity. 6'2" fire line. Got it on the old Fluger reel. I can tell you I can lift this up, drop it down, lift it up, drop it down, and I'll know whether that fish sucked it in, or if he just grabbed my bait, or if it's over the top of his teeth. You might think I'm kidding, but I'm not. Has anybody ever vertical jigged and felt a jig go over the top of their fish's teeth? Yeah. That's the difference of being in tune, focused, paying attention to what's going on. I'll sit there and go up and down, 45 degrees. Two of the best jig fishermen I know, Jake and Wally Tuck. I don't even know if they have rod holders. They probably do now because they're getting pretty old, but they'll never let a rod out of their hand. And you think about doing that for 7, 8, 10 hours a day, you better have a nice, light equipment because it's going to start wearing on you. I mean, when it comes to those big cranking rods, it's pretty hard to hold on to them for 4 or 5 hours at a time. You don't need to. But when you're jigging, be in tune to what's going on. You're sitting there lifting it up, dropping it down. I like to make sure that line is tight all the way down, all the way back up. Tight all the way down, all the way back up. I'm feeling it. I can tell when that fish sucks it in. I can tell if he just grabbed the minnow or he just grabbed the night crawler. And I can tell when the lead goes over his teeth. And there ain't nothing better. If you're in a lake where you can fish minnows and you're sitting there holding the rod and all of a sudden your rod starts shaking because that minnow, you know why? Because he's about ready to get ate and his eyes are this big because it's all over with. And there is nothing funner. And when you're on a minnow bite and feel them things clunking, they'll hit so hard. So, you know, vertical jigging, as I mentioned, sit there, lift it up, drop it down, lift it up, drop it down. But again, stay in the strike zone. I've caught a lot of fish at 3 or 4 feet of water. Vertical too, depending on the stained water. And all the way out into the 40s, vertical. You got to have the right equipment, the right bait. Again, I'm running 6 foot, 6'3". Really, these Finwicks are amazing. They're like 6'2" fire line. It's the ticket. And the reason why I like that line is because I can see it pop. I can see it when the fish hits it. I'm pitching the shore. I can see it tap. I've seen it where I'm lifting it up, drop it down. All of a sudden, I see just a little tiny twitch in the water. Fish has got it. So be paying attention to details. Details, details, details. Question on jigging. Yeah.
You fish shiver minnows?
Shiver minnows. I fish some paddle tails. I fish a lot of gulp. I know a lot of people run shiver minnows. I've ran them. I don't fish them religiously, no, but I know they work. I can tell you last week I was running paddle tails and gulp. And I'm a big gulp guy, that's because I know it works. One time me and Jason were on Fresno Reservoir pre-fishing, and it was on his birthday. We said, I'm going to pitch. You can't use minnows in there, so we started looking at smelt and black shad. Is that what you like, Mark? Black shad. And I'm telling you what, we had one of the best days we ever had. It was unbelievable. Everywhere we went, we caught fish on that gulp. It was amazing. It was so fun. And it was just crazy. But I like plastics. Will I put twister tails on this? Absolutely. Whatever it takes, you got to experiment. My favorite way is, like I told you, thread on that night crawler, straight leech, just like that, with nothing on it, right there. That is as good as it gets. But if I need to go in a profile and I know there's minnows in there, I'll run the gulps. I'm all about running gulps. And action creates what?
Reaction.
You're fast. Oh, there you go. Thank you. Yeah. So remember that. Vertical jigging, lift it up, drop it down. Stay in tune, lift it up, drop it down, lift it up, drop it down, lift it up, drop it down. If it's really muddy, really stained water, I'll beat the bottom. Beat the bottom. I want to hear, I'm visualizing my jig beating in the mud, turbulating things. Who knows what's going on down there, bouncing off rocks. If that's what causes the fish to bite, I'm going to pay attention to it because of a reaction test. There you go.
Were those gulp leeches you had a minute ago?
Yeah. You want them?
Well, yeah.
Have you been paying attention?
Don't throw them.
An action creates a reaction.
Was it black shad gulp? Good use.
Yeah, black shad and smelt probably two top. You got pink shine. Huh?
In Fresno or Valero?
Fresno, Valero, all. Tiber. Anywhere anywhere you think minnow swims, boat will work. I'll tell you that right now. Tell you that right now. Thanks for bringing those back. All right, we're going to slip bobbing because I'll tell you what. I don't know about any of you, but the last time I checked, I have never got tired of hearing a kid giggle because the bobber's down, or quite frankly, my own bobber's going down. Because I tell you what, I like it. It's real simple. I mean, there is not a better way. Spring of the year. I'm going to send this around just for people to kind of pay attention to what it looks like. It's simple, but it's a quick system is what I got here. A lot of people don't run it. A lot of people tie direct. You'll see. Go ahead and pass that around. There is a Gamakatsu on the bottom. Be careful. That's just an example. But I can tell you I'm a big slip bobber fan. I love slip bobber. Right here I got probably a number 4 Gamakatsu. This is a tool, again, to put the presentation in the strike zone. And there's nothing better than watching a bobber go down. There's something going to happen if it goes under the water unless you're snagged up. Now this right here is probably one of the most traditional systems right here. But what I do, which is different than most people, and I got a bunch of different systems. This one here, as you can see, I got my stuff. I run as big as I can get away with up here on the top. See that bead? That's where I can see to make sure I got to where I need to be. A couple different things. If I'm fishing right under the boat, first thing I'll do, get in here without getting hooked up. Tell you what, folks, we got a lot of good lineups for today coming in for seminars today. So make sure you guys are paying attention. We got Russ Hadley coming in next after me. I mean, he's a great angler, and then Jason Mendel, and then we got Mr. Zimmer coming in this afternoon. So make sure you're prepared. I'll set this thing right on that hook, especially if I'm off the side of the boat. And I'll drop it straight down, and I'll see what happens. Boom. If it goes down there, boom. All right. I'm a foot below the water. First thing I'll do is I'll pull it up. And I don't want to be a foot below. I want to be about 16 inches because I want to be just off the bottom. And there is nothing probably more deadly. And no matter what, whether you got a half a night crawler, whether you got a leech on it, whether you got a minnow on it, this thing sitting there going like this all day, right in front of that fish's nose all day. One of my favorite ways to do it, learned it with my son Bobby, was spot lock, but then I didn't have spot lock. I had to have ultimate bolt control or an anchor out. Pitch this thing to shore, a little bit of wind, and just letting it drift. Could you visualize that going by a fish and a leech sitting there swimming? It is so deadly. There is nothing more deadly than that. I'm telling you, they can't resist it. They cannot resist it. And it's not the fastest way to fish, but if you're sitting there, you're pitching jigs and you want to have a little fun, throw out a cork. Because I'll tell you what, it can tell you a lot of stuff that's going on down there. Don't be afraid to play with your hooks either. You know, 8s, 4s, 6s, Gamakatsu hooks work really good. All right, Bassmasters, okay? One of the things that works really good, so all these things are systems that I got hooked up here, okay? They're all for quick presentations, fishing. Again, here it is. So I got a barrel swivel, I got a standout hook, or you can tie a Gamakatsu out there for a stand-up, and then I got a little baby fireball down on the bottom. Now I'll use small jigs, 16th ounce, up to a 1/4 ounce. And that right there, with 2 leeches. Bring me back my leeches. Hey buddy, I need my leeches.
I got him right here.
Bring them over here. Gave them away too quick. That'll teach me one. So I showed you the split shot with the Gamakatsu, which is a deadly presentation. Again, you know what I'm running here? 7-foot Berkeley Series 1 rod. Got the old Fluger reel on here, President. 6'2" fire line again. You know why I got 6'2" fire line? It don't stretch. When I'm casting that shore and I got a little bit of bow in there and I watch that bobber go down, it ain't going to take much for me to put that hook into that fish. And a lot of times, I mean, I could be pitching 25, 30 yards out there floating it. But again, when you're floating at different depths, you better know where you're at. You got to experiment. So if you cast up there and it sinks right away and hangs up, you're too shallow. You got to keep working it. You got to stay in the strike zone. People
Is
make
that top one, Bob, just a knot?
no. Oh, right here, it's a regular slip bobber knot. It comes threaded up, you slide it over it. First goes that, then goes your bead. And the reason why I told you I like that big bead, because I want to do it. If I got an orange top, I use a chartreuse bead. If I got a chartreuse top, I use an orange bead. But make sure the hole isn't too big for the knot to stick. Because if it sticks, it'll screw you up. Trust me, I've been there. So, this right here is probably the deadliest presentation you can have when it comes to slip bottom. If I get it all put together.
So your hook's normally just 2-3 feet under the water.
No. So say I'm in 6 feet of water. I'll have, well, we're just gonna do it real quick. Oh, gotta get into those, that guy's stinky old one. You know what? I didn't even wash my hands on this stuff. So on this standout, you can use a regular Gamakatsu. They actually have the bass guys, you know, they got the standout hooks. Right there is one deadly system. So visualize this. I'm sitting off my boat, that's sitting down there. This is probably 6-8 inches off the bottom. That one's gonna be, you know, a foot to 18 inches off the bottom. Or if I decide I'm gonna go working down, I cast ashore and I want it to float, this thing's gonna be sitting there with that bobber going like this. So you got 2 morsels, and I can tell you, you want to be paying attention to it. You know, and there's no rhyme or reason which one's going to fire. The top one starts firing you, that tells you something. Maybe the fish aren't where the bottom one is. Okay, choke it up a little bit. If the bottom one fires, why just keep doing what you're doing? You know, an action creates a reaction, it's critical. You can put night crawlers on it, you can put minnows on it where you're allowed to. Follow your rules and regulations of the state, please. But that right there is probably one of the most, I know you're going to like this one, because I already know you're downloading. This right here is as good as it gets right there. Location, presentation equals fish. This does not get old right here. And it's fun watching a bobber go down. It is so fun because something's happening on the other end. And this will work for every species, not just walleye, every species. Pike, crappie, perch is deadly down on the south end. Especially with a couple of Pete's flies. That's exactly how I hook his flies up for down the south end. And listen to those kids giggle and reeling in fish. It's like combat fishing. You just have your safety glasses on and have fun and keep baiting them up. So, but this is a deadly way to fish. Remember, one of the most important things is be in the strike zone. Be in the strike zone. So as I mentioned, yes, Warren.
Question, the purpose of the slip bobber is so the fish can grab that bait and take it a little bit before.
Yeah, I'll let the bobber go down. I'll let it go underneath the water. I want to make sure he's engaged.
Yeah, he's engaged.
Yep, I want to make sure he's engaged, because sometimes they're not. And I've set the hook where they're not on it. I mean, or maybe it wasn't no fish there, maybe I hung up. But when I watch it go down and it swims off, I notice it. I was over at Lake Francis fishing, night fishing. A pink and white glow hook with a leech with lit bobbers at midnight. And it's kind of fun watching a glowed bobber going underneath the water, because you know what's towing it around. Nice big fat walleye. Questions on this? So, as I mentioned, we got Mr. Hadley coming up. The guy's the river master. You got to stay tuned for him. We've got Big J coming up on Fort Peck That guy spent hundreds of hours over there dissecting Fort Peck. He's also my fishing partner. Part of the reason why I'm successful, because I have a good partner, dedicated, dependable, reliable, and prepared. Did I tell you about the prepared part in the Navy SEAL? Just want to roll that in there. It's all about that. And then we got, Dick Zimmer coming in. We got Levi too, talking about bass too early this afternoon. He's doing a great job on that. So stay tuned, a lot going on. Remember, having the right equipment, the right stuff. If you need it, grab me, grab any of the pro staff. We'll help you get hooked up and get it at Snappy's. Any questions? Yes.
You talked about a slip dive, but what about a slip sinker?
I ain't talking about Lindy rigging. You're gonna have to come to the next presentation. I'll save it for you. It's another way, but I'll talk about that next time. How's that? Lindy rigging's a good way too. Mark does more of it than I do, but it's a good way to put bait in front of the fish. But this right here is a killer. Questions? Thanks for coming. Stay tuned for the next presentations. If you need anything, grab me. I gotta button my stuff up, get ready for Mr. Hadley. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.